Hi, welcome to JETforce Chats, where we talk about everything related to digital embellishment. My name is Kevin Abergel, and I'm your host. Welcome to another edition of the JETforce Chats. I'm your host, Kevin Abergel, and today with me, I'm very, very happy to introduce Matt Redbear from Blue Ocean Press in South Florida. Matt, what's up? How are you?
Hey, Kevin, it's good to see you again. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. How have you been weathering this past couple of years actually since the pandemic?
Pretty well. Ups and downs. It's literally a roller coaster, and there's no better way to describe it than a roller coaster. It's just one week you're crazy busy, and the next week you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
all
peaks and
right.
valleys.
But it gives you time to work on a bunch of things, is what it does.
Yeah. Well, I know you. I know how creative you are, and I think a lot of people on LinkedIn that kind of follow what you do always look forward to your creation. So I'm sure that you've been like in the lab creating some crazy stuff, and I'm sure you'll talk to us about that, huh?
Yeah, and trying to put it in videos more often than I have been,
Yeah.
which is a challenge because it's a very time-consuming endeavor in itself.
Sure, I know. So listen, I know who you are. A lot of people know who you are. For those people who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself, Matt, and what do you do, and tell us a little bit about what you do at Blue Ocean.
Well, let me start with Ocean Press, if I may.
Sure.
Because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for Blue Ocean Press. My former employer was considering an MGI JETvarnish and wasn't able to pull the strings. And I don't think I would have had the opportunity to even work with that machine at that establishment anyway. But when Tom over here at Blue Ocean Press was considering getting one and finally pulled the trigger on doing it, uh, he knew that I was the guy to run it. Not that I'm a machine operator, but I'm a designer. So I immediately moved over here and just tried to start learning about everything that I could about the machine, which there wasn't a lot of information at the time, which is why I started collecting information and doing videos, etc. So that launched my interest in the world of embellishment and particularly in the digital side. I have experience with other forms of embellishment, but this new technology was just like, wow. I mean, when you see it in print, you can't even begin to describe it. You have to show it. You have to feel it. You have to touch it. You have to see it in person. So I was so impressed with it. I didn't even hesitate. I'm like, hey, I'm in, and started working here even before the machine showed up. So that gave me an opportunity to see how the machine was put together, the installation, the technicians that put it together. The whole thing became very integrated experience for me. So my past has been with photography, photographic production technology to be exact, and the world of silver halide technology,
Yeah.
chemistry, organic chemistry, sensitometry, densitometry, color theory, and the amazing machinery that we used in the mini lab industry to produce colored prints on a commercial consumer level as well as professional. So I migrated out of that when digital became a new thing in the mid 90s. It was becoming more prolific, uh, uh, particularly with just getting things on paper. It was a whole new idea of getting things on paper digitally. So I migrated into that, worked in pre-press for years, and then finally got this opportunity and moved over here, and that's where I'm at now.
Wow. So I mean, it sounds like you're like a jack of so many trades, going from not just the design but the photography aspect to even running the machines themselves. That's listen. I've always said this, and people who know me have always agreed. I think, and I think you would agree too. I think a good person behind the wheel is what's going to determine whether or not you're going to be successful when it comes to this kind of technology. Because, and I could be wrong, but are you probably like one of the best salespeople at Blue Ocean just because you know what to show people, when to show
Well,
it?
I have to intervene a lot. It's not so much as being a salesperson, it's assisting the sales staff. And it requires a lot of intervention because they all get in their head, the idea of how they want to do it. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Stop thinking that way. That you're thinking about how things were constructed before all this new technology came along. And that's great. But now you need to adapt it and apply it to where we're going to from this point forward.
Sure. And so teaching the design. So, okay, here's the question for you. Me, when I want something really cool done, whether it's these awesome note cards that you did for me,
Oh, yeah,
or
those.
this insane brochure that just came out so well, you know what I do? I just send it to you, Matt, and I go, Matt, work your magic. And I have never been disappointed. How often does that happen? Where your sales staff will come in, or just a customer will be like, Matt, what can you do? I know what you've done before. Just do it again. Does that
Well, it
happen?
seems to happen a little less than I wish it would.
Yeah.
Uh, there again, it's education and trying to intervene and get people to see things from a three-dimensional perspective rather than just putting a blob of varnish on something and ending up with a two-dimensional product.
Hmm.
That's one of my biggest challenges ongoing, without a doubt,
Yeah.
is trying to overcome that. Now, sometimes it ends up working out pretty well. It's surprising it ends up looking better than I thought it would. But there's just, you can always take it to the next level. There's always a way.
Sure, sure. I'm sure when you run those jobs, you're probably just looking at them going, "Oh, if only I had a crack at this design." Uh,
I know. I know. I had one today,
yeah.
but the customer loved it. They loved it exactly the way they had designed it, and they were informed enough and were educated enough to be able to layer things the way that they wanted to. And
Huh.
it was impressive to be able to see that kind of work just start coming in on its own.
So that's maybe just a result of all the work that you've done in the past, educating these designers. Now they're starting to come in into a pretty well packaged design, understanding how to design for it. Uh, if you had one piece of advice for a lot of the designers out there when they're designing for you and for your Jet Varnish, like what would you tell them?
Just get out of the box.
Yeah.
Just stop doing it the way that, I mean, if you're doing it in this fantastic way already and people just love it, well then keep doing it because that's your brand, that's your idea. But I don't know. I mean, you just got to get to know Photoshop a little bit better. You get to know Illustrator a little bit better, hone your design skills a little bit more, work with layers and masks and things a little bit more. Just more technical knowledge
Hmm.
will help you get to that point of just being able to open up to new possibilities that you didn't think you had.
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess that makes sense too, and I think most designers know layering and Photoshop, but probably some of the issues they run into is what it looks like on the screen won't always necessarily show the way that it looks on the screen on the paper, and I think that's also trial and error. Just that's how I learned. That's probably how you learned. Just
And
understanding what translates.
and just to cover that in a little more detail, it's not even so much as trial and error or experience. I mean, it's trying to think beyond what that substrate is going to do. What is the dye level? What is the surface activity? Does it have a lamination? How is that varnish going to lay on it? You know, if a customer just comes in and has this rigid specs and say, I want 73 microns of varnish on this, and you know it's going to look bad because it's fine type, and you need to back off a little bit because all of
Mm,
the holes in the letters are going to fill in and plug, and it's just going to look like this blob. There are ways you can work around it. You know, you can actually take something like that and use less varnish and run it through the machine twice.
yep,
So, or back
yep,
off and use just one of the inkjet print head rows
yep.
instead
On the
of both
bars.
of them, and then you get a finer, tighter, lay of varnish. And sometimes the substrate that it's on is just hopeless.
Yeah,
It's
but
just doesn't work. It soaks up the varnish. It just, there's nothing you can do.
yeah, well, I think that really that sounds like you've experienced and you've really done a lot of the experimentation on your own. Um, okay, so I got some quick fire questions for you, right?
Okay.
All right, Matt. Favorite laminate. Go.
Uh, Soft touched 0.3 mil.
Okay. Favorite paper.
Uh, it was Futura just for everyday purposes, but they don't make it anymore.
Ah.
Supply chain issues. So that's moved over to I don't know. I have to stop and think. Pro, Pro Digital
Okay. What
for
about
everyday use.
your favorite foil to use on the JETvarnish?
I had the pleasure of yesterday speaking with the um, sales rep from Infinity Foils. He's
Yeah,
down from Chicago, and to soak up some sun on the beach, I guess. Chicago would be really cold this time of year. So,
indeed.
just basically anything from Infinity, and we're trying to work with them in order to get some more specialty foils developed. It'd be a nice
Yeah.
little try.
Did you play at all with some of the cracked ice, some of the transparent ones that
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely. And we have some in stock still. We bought out everything that they had for
yeah,
cracked ice and the what's called lots of dots.
yeah.
So
I wouldn't say
I
that
tr-
out loud. Someone's gonna break into your warehouse overnight, buddy. I wouldn't say that out loud.
I won't give it up. There's no way I'll give that up.
Uh,
Lots of dots looks like confetti. It's a
yeah.
holographic confetti, and it came in both a clear base and a silver base.
Ooh.
So
Ooh.
you could take the clear base and lay it on top of whatever image you
An image.
had with shading or whatever effects you had in Photoshop to make that text or image look even more dimensional, like drop shadowing or whatever,
Yeah.
and then lay that clear foil on top of it with the holographic glitter, and it was
Ooh.
quite amazing.
Wow. What about just varnish on top of it? Did that bring out the lots of dots or not so much?
We did that just to protect the foil, and it didn't really. It made it a
Did they
little
really?
more lustrous,
Yeah.
just a little more lustrous. The clear base itself is a little milky.
Yeah.
It's not as shiny as so when you put the varnish on top, then it picks up that extra shine.
Wow. So it's funny you're talking about that. Some of the clear foils. I don't know. They were working on them back when I was at MGI on a really interesting. It was like a clear matte foil to be able to do matte varnish.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever see any of that? Any of the experimental rolls?
So uh, one of our distributors has sent me a sample roll of that, but
Yeah.
you would have to use it under just the right situation and circumstances in order to get benefit from it. It has to be on a medium shade of color, nothing
Yeah.
too light, nothing too dark, preferably something that has some texture to it already, like shading or an extrusion effect, something that gives it a little oomph.
Oh yeah.
Um, so to just put it on something like a large area, it just doesn't seem to have any
Of
kind of
course.
impact whatsoever.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so back to the quick fire questions. You've run some phenomenal jobs, but I got to ask you, do you have any favorites?
Yes, I do, and I'm glad that you said that plural because let me tell you a pet peeve of mine is when someone would come to me, and this is something, of course, a 4-year-old would come and ask you, like, "What's your favorite color?" or "What's your favorite food?" Well, I have lots of favorite foods.
Yeah.
I have probably 3.2 million favorite colors. I can't tell you there's just one favorite. So I have lots of favorites, and it's usually a group that is a monthly cycle of them. This month I have this whole group of favorites, and next month I have another whole group of favorites. Um, I would have to say anything with a silver holographic foil
Mm.
would just be, it's just amazing to me what this stuff does.
Oh man, look at
I
that.
it's just it picks up the light
I agree.
and just look at that. It's just insane.
Yeah.
And what happens is when you put that varnish underneath the foil and it has that texture, it picks up light from all different angles at the edges and different angles on the surface. This is actually the piece of foil that I used to stamp
Wow.
that out so you can see where it cut out. But it's
Wow.
just fire. I gift
Oh,
wrapped someone's a birthday present in this once, and it was just like
What a smart idea.
you go crazy looking at it. And then there's also the gold
Yeah. Oh, is that the
holographic.
those are my two favorite colors, man, for sure.
Yeah, it's different. It's more subtle. It's a little
Yeah.
richer. Um, and I haven't used it on much because it's really hard to get.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, anything with gold foil, I know that sounds cliche, but you
It's
can never go wrong with gold foil.
it's a classic.
And
Yeah.
it's you can use it on everything. But for example,
Wow.
this is uh, how the piece looked coming off the press.
Wow.
That's what we started with, and then that's what we ended up with.
Man, look at that detail. That is
Tiny,
absolutely
tiny,
nuts.
tiny little dots. Look at that string of tiny little dots in there that make those
Wow.
circles. That's a row of tiny, tiny, tiny dots. And then this also had a layer of varnish. So you can see the
Wow.
texturing that looks like almost like a mosaic grid in there.
I'm sorry, Matt. This is probably the nicest design I've ever seen on the JETvarnish. And that's
So
saying something. That's insane. What was the customer's reaction when they saw that piece? I mean, were you there when they
they
saw it?
I was not. I had left early for the day because I had an appointment, and he came in late to personally proof, a live proof. I ran that
Yeah.
on both copper and gold foil
Wow.
because he wanted to see the difference. And the copper was nice, but the gold was obviously more vivid. So that was the one that he went with, and that was the one that I just showed you. But this guy, Jamil, he's up at the Maltz Jupiter Theater in West Palm Beach. It used to be the Burt Reynolds Theater, Playhouse,
Yeah.
or whatever, once upon a time. So they have taken over new management. He's the art director, and he's got a great team of artists, and they push those boundaries of everything that they can do up there. And it's just, I mean, they do all these casino fundraisers, just
Wow.
lots of. That's his design. Um, he brought this in, and then I changed everything on him, and I gave texture to these chips.
That is
So
so
that's
cool.
just one pass of varnish, but it looks like it's got multiple layers. But when you create the mask correctly, then it looks like you've run it through a couple different times in order to get that effect. And this, I wanted the postcard effect, which looked like a vintage postcard, to have
Yeah.
texture. I wanted to be able to feel it, and I also put just a speckling of varnish on top of the foil
I see it. It's
to
just
break it.
barely a reflection for sure.
Yeah, just to break it up. And then on the playing cards, of course, we've got the shimmering varnish in select areas.
Oh man, look how that pops off the page. You could just see the
Yeah.
reflections.
So those were my ideas, and he's like, let's throw away what I did and let's use what you did. He says, I'm not even going to show my boss what I did. I'm just going to tell him I did that.
That's well, you're making them look good, and I think that's what most people want in a provider such as yourself. That's what the brands are looking for. Is
Sure.
I don't know what's out there. Matt, you show me what's out there. Show me what's possible, and make me look good. And if you do that, I'll keep coming back to you. And it sounds like this guy keeps coming back every time.
Yeah, he does. We've done many, many different pieces for him, and he's never been disappointed.
So listen, Matt, you're doing a great job. You're really creative on it. If you had like a magic wand, what would you add today to like your offering? Like, what's like the one thing that you would love to have?
How about white foil?
Ooh,
I want white foil.
yeah,
And this was a test that failed
yeah.
because it's not the correct base for our machine, but it didn't do too bad. That's 12-point type.
Yeah, so in my experience, the white foil has always been good on the small details, but as soon as you start going after large, oh look at that, it's the
Mm-hmm.
tactical logo. All right. Uh,
Yeah. Yep.
I've always found issues when it comes to running bigger solids. Is that kind of what you ran into here, or or not so
Yeah,
much?
I mean, just overall, it doesn't seem to lay on the sheet like it should have. And so I'm asking them, would you please?
Yeah.
Because, for every machine, you need a different base on your
Yeah.
foil.
Yep.
If you're using traditional hot
Sure.
stamping, there's a different
Sure.
code for it. For the MGI, everything from Infinity is MD. Crown has their own code for it. This was a PP base, which I don't know what that was exactly for. If you're running a Scodix,
Yep.
you order a different base
Yep.
that's more compatible with that varnish. It's
Yep.
not like it's one product fits all machines. So
It's true.
would they please start doing, oh please, more of
White,
just white or more solid pigment color?
like spot colors.
Yeah, and I've used black. I actually have black foil.
Yeah.
That comes from Crown Roll Reef, and it works pretty well. And what's interesting, you've like, why would you use black foil? And I used it on this black, on this
Yeah.
touche.
So it gives you kind of
Uh,
like that duotone, that two-tone black.
yeah. So you're
Yeah.
thinking, why would I put black on black, black foil on black? But well, this has a matte finish,
Right.
and the foil has a gloss finish. And if you look at it slightly from one angle, it reflects a little cyan. If you look at it from the other angle, it reflects a little bit of magenta
Wow.
from those
Wow.
two perspectives. So you get that play on color within the black.
Well, and I love it too, is that you're not afraid to go. I've always said less is more when it comes to this technology. And the more subtle you can be in your design, the more it's going to be impactful and the more luxurious it looks. And putting black on black may sound like a boring idea, but the subtlety and the differences between the reflections when you do get it in the right light makes all the difference in the world. At least in my,
And do you,
yep.
who wants that? Black on black or white on black are the high end customers.
Oh yeah, yeah. Also, matte. So I found that in the luxury market, like they don't necessarily like the gold that we do, the bright shiny gold. They've always wanted to go towards the more muted golds and the more muted silvers, the less blingy. So I don't know if you've seen that. That's what we're seeing in Europe, and that's what we're seeing in other parts. Is that generally the high end customers want the matte foils? Are you seeing that at all, or not so much?
We're seeing more of that, and
Yeah,
we're having trouble getting matte finish foils. It's
yeah,
just, I don't know why it's so difficult.
yeah.
Of course, you can always have a huge batch made and pay for it and store it in a warehouse and hope you use it before the expiration date, which is not likely. But it is just to sit in a hot warehouse and go bad.
Yeah.
But from speaking with the representative Jeff yesterday from Infinity Foils, uh, he is seeing a definite uptick in the demand for foil types and different types of foil for these digital machines.
Hmm.
So that's why he's making the rounds in order to find out what people want and how to meet that demand.
That's good, man. That's the good way to do your job is to get out there and actually hear it from the people using it. I'm a big fan of all the goofy type foils that are out there. The more unique they are, the crazier you can get with your design. So, is that an issue though? Finding foils in the supply chain, is that an issue you guys are running into right now?
It's always been an issue because it's all based on a batch. They'll make a batch and then they'll let it run out because there's no demand at the moment.
Right.
So then they wait until there's enough of a
Yeah.
momentum again, and by then you've had two or three customers you had to turn away or at least substitute for something else that they didn't really want in the first place.
Ah, for sure. That's a tough. It's tough. It's a tough for them too to be able to forecast it. But it's definitely something I'm hearing other people too. What about paper? How are you guys doing on paper?
Oh wow, okay, so customer wants a job run, and I hear my guys over here in the production department all day. If I'm sitting at this desk, they're just beyond that wall, and I won't repeat some of the words that they say because probably you'd have to start putting little beeps in here and there. But the frustration level is so high for
Yeah.
everybody. It's gotten to the point right now where if it's available, and even if you think you might need to use it in the next 2 years, just buy it and store it.
No
And
kidding.
then I've got other printers calling us because they saw me using this black touche, and I'm like, we've got some scrap. We'll sell it to you. And they're like, yeah, how much? I don't care how much. Just ship it to me. Here's my shipping number. So,
Wow.
and we also have competitors that we know of that are just buying paper regardless of what it is.
Yeah. Just
They don't
sitting on
care
it.
what it is. They just buy it and get it. So, customer calls up. They want to quote, check out the paper, call the mill. It's a mill item. The mill isn't going to deliver it until 2023. So,
What?
yeah,
You're
yeah.
getting 1 year lead
Some,
times? Whoa.
yes,
Whoa. It's tough time to be a printer, man. I gotta say, respect. It's you guys have to really you have to fight for every piece of paper that you get through those doors.
it's just supply chain for everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Wow. So listen, if you can ask some of the other JETvarnish operators who are out there, people who are kind of a similar kind of profile, what kind of questions would you want to ask them? Because I know that you know the equipment pretty well. I don't know if it'd be technical or what kind of stuff would you want to learn from other operators?
Well, let's start by saying that there are operators, and then there are some that are a little, you know, there's button pushers, and then there's some that
The
actually really
creatives.
get in. Yeah, they really get into
Yeah.
running the machine, and they really enjoy tweaking this and doing that. And it's like, well, that didn't
Yeah.
work. How do we make it work? So you've
Yeah.
got two kinds of people running these machines. You know, I just am curious. Why do you do this? What makes you tick? And
Interesting.
are you finding, where is your, how do you get joy out of this? Because there, for me, it is that, like, wow, this isn't working. How can we make it work? I'm putting foil, raised foil, on offset papers that are never meant to go through this machine, like that very porous
Yep.
parchment
Yeah.
and laid stock. It's really porous, spongy. It's almost like a felt. Um, I can get that to work because we have a digital press that lays toner on top of everything and then puts fuser oil on top of that. So I've got that barrier. It just, now I can lay
Smart.
that varnish on there, and I might have to run it through twice. Get a nice thin coat on there and get another layer on there. And the beautiful thing about this machine is that artificial intelligence scanner, that AIS.
Yeah.
Because if you're running in full scanner mode and you set your job up right, it will register everything exactly on top of what was there. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just freaky how,
Yeah.
and I can have like 8-point type, 8 to
Huh.
9-point type, and lay that on top of itself and on top of itself with foil on top of that on offset papers like parchment and laid. Um,
Wow.
but you've got to lay something down first. You have to print something on it first for that varnish to sit on. And so
Sure.
you have to register perfectly to that. Then you have to register perfectly to that again. So those are the things that really get me interested. So these other operators, it's like, do they do that?
So some do. So I can. You're gonna love this community, Matt, because there's a lot of people just like you who I think they're a weird eclectic mix of half. The thing
Thanks.
is, no. Here's what it is. It's not very often you get the mix of super creative mixed with super
Mm-hmm.
scientific, and I think those are the people who get the most joy, who brag about the crazy stuff that they're able to figure out that nobody else in the world is figuring out, and is able to do that, and that's I think that's like total added value to the owner. Like Tom is lucky to have somebody with your curiosity and your I guess your will to just keep trying until you figure it out, but also mix that with creativity. So
Yeah, well, it's also Tom pushing that too, because, in the beginning, I was locked into the idea of specifications. Well, the machine isn't made to do that. It isn't set up for that, or that's not a type of paper that you're supposed to use. And I was telling people it couldn't be done. So I'm just as guilty of that.
Mm.
And the guy that actually got me hired here, who I worked with at a previous job, who hired me there, cornered me and said, try it first. Whatever you do, don't say that you can't do it. It's just going to make the boss unhappy. Whatever you do, you might think it won't work. Try it first and then prove that it can't be done. And don't you know that sometimes it actually works, Kevin? I'm like, I didn't think that would work.
Pushing the envelope. I love it. I love it. Oh man. Well, listen. Let's say you can go back really quickly and go back in time and I guess talk to yourself right as this machine was coming in. What's like the
Oh,
one piece of advice that you would tell Matt Redbear a couple years ago before this went in?
probably just take a breath. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's going to be as good as you can get it. Um, and if you need help, just don't hesitate to call anyone. You've
Yeah.
got all these excellent people who are higher up than you, the technicians, the installers.
Mm,
They're available, on a limited basis, but you could reach them and get information from them,
mm.
and maybe get an idea to where you need to go to next. But don't sweat it. If it's not working, maybe it just doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to be great. It's going to be really great. But I keep thinking it has to like be absolutely perfect, and that's just not the case.
Well, that's good. I think that's a great piece of advice for anything in life, really. That's a very wise thing to say. And I hope to be soon adding to your repertoire of people that you can call if you want to try to figure stuff out. This community that we're putting together. It's like there's no salespeople in this community. It's only MGI users. So only operators speaking with operators and estimators talking to the other estimators and owners and talking to owners and having that kind of fellowship that you can kind of develop with other people who are in the same shoes as you, many of them the same profile as you, with that that technical dash creative spirit. And hopefully we'll be able to learn from one another on how to run jobs and how to run certain foils and papers and discover, hey, this guy in India is doing this, why didn't we think about doing this, or this guy in this part of the world is doing it with this thing, why not do it that way? So
Mm-hmm.
um, I,
Sure.
I hope that the commute. Look, we're creative. We love this stuff enough to create that spark. I think for that community to be there. I think I just see you talk about it, and the passion behind your eyes when you're talking about this stuff is very similar that I see across the board with a lot of the JETvarnish users out there. So we'll see. Hopefully, this is going to be a nice little group that we can get together, have some drinks, maybe virtually first, and then eventually start having in person parties. But who knows? Who knows? Well, listen, I wanted to thank you very much for your time, Matt. You have been an inspiration for a lot of us watching you on LinkedIn. Keep sharing, keep putting up that insanely creative work. We will keep liking and sharing as long as you keep putting that stuff up, my friend.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions, they're welcome to contact me through my work, Blue Ocean Press. We're easily found on the internet, and through my email as well, which is redbear@blueoceanpress.com.
I'll put
Uh,
links up.
yeah, don't hesitate to contact me, because I love this stuff and I love that interaction.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you,
Have
Kevin.
have a great rest of your day, and let's look forward to exchanging more within the JETvarnish or the JETforce community.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.